coming of AI comes brand new controls within the GRC world that we've never had to deal with before. The top of that list comes Data Provenance. Hello, I'm Ben Dorman, and welcome to Secured AI. Today I will be talking about the importance of data provenance in LLMs and the problems that it solves. If you're interested in more content about AI, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Let's get started. I have to admit, this isn't the first time I've heard of the word provenance. However, it's usually something that's associated with art. With art, provenance tracks all of the owners that had a piece of art. It's more than that, though. It helps prove the validity of the piece of artwork, that it's not a fake. For data provenance, it's not much different. It will answer such things as, where did this data come from? Do you have the rights to this data? How was the data transformed during the training process? Did anyone tamper with the data? Recording where the data came from and proving that you have the rights to that data is extremely important. With AI comes new audit procedures and new questions for GRC. Consider this scenario. You start running an LLM in production. It is later determined that your LLM has a bias against people located in a certain region. If you don't have clean records of where your data came from, how can you determine where the LLM got its bias or how to fix it? How about this? Someone claims that your LLM has stolen their IP. If you can't prove that your AI was not trained on their IP, you are looking at a lawsuit. Not to mention taking your LLM out of production and starting the training process over from scratch. Having clear data provenance from the beginning would have prevented all of this, saving your business thousands of dollars. Knowing where the data comes from and if you have the rights to that data is clear knowledge that needs to be established from the start of creating your LLM. Also, having clear knowledge of how the data was transformed and if anyone tampered with the data is a must-know. Data poisoning is at the top 10 vulnerabilities for LLMs according to OWASP. If you're not thinking about this from the very beginning, you will get hit. This starts off with the original data set. This must be stored in a read-only location, like an S3 bucket. Along with that, you must hash that data set so you have a reference if anything has been changed or modified. Changing the original data set before training is almost always guaranteed. The reason for this? Data rarely comes in a nicely needed format content. LLMs need nicely needed formatted data to prevent hallucinations and bias. This can be things like making sure the first letter of the names are capitalized and the rest are lowercase, removing duplicate data, blank data being replaced with unknown. I still haven't mentioned the number one reason to modify data. That reason being removing PII and PHI. PII stands for Personal Identification Information, and PHI stands for Prohibited Health Information. This is something that's like Social Security numbers and health information. Very rarely should LLMs be trained on these two things. Releasing this information is also in the top 10 vulnerabilities for LLMs. There are several severe legal and ethical violations if PII or PHI ever gets released. Preventing this from the start by not training your LLM on it is the best way to prevent it. If your LLM must be trained on Social Security numbers, consider hashing the Social Security numbers before training on it. This allows for masking of the data, which helps with preventing releasing PII and PHI. Each time the data changes, a detailed list of what was changed and why it was changed is all part of the data provenance. If a program, like a Python script, was used to modify the data, keep a copy of that script in the data provenance. The data should also be versioned and hash everything. If something ever gets modified, you will have the hash to confirm if something was compromised. Then all this needs to be stored in a read-only bucket. You may be thinking to yourself that this all sounds great and dandy, but how do I actually accomplish setting up a data provenance? With a new need comes PaaS, or Providence as a Service. AWS has AWS Glue DataView, and Azure has Azure Purview. I'm not going to tell you which one is better. If this is something you need for your business, I strongly recommend reading up on these services and what they can offer you. Now, all of this sounds great in theory, but in practice, why should a company do this? Let's face it, if you can't prove an ROI, return on investment, most companies will choose to skip this step. Deploy on Tuesday and patch on Wednesday is not an uncommon saying. There are several regulatory and legal reasons to keep track of data provenance. GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, requires organizations to demonstrate lawful processing of personal data, keep records of data sources, and be able to answer who, what, when, and why for any data subject request. A provenance cell can provide the audit logs needed to prove compliance and to honor the rights to erasure or rights to access. The AI Act, still in the proposal state, classifies certain AI systems, including high-risk LLMs, as subject to stringent conformity assessment. One of the mandatory requirements is traceability of training data. Organizations must be able to show the origin, quality, and any reprocessing steps. Provenance records becomes a legal artifact in the conformity assessment dossier. The CCPA, CPRA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, Privacy Rights Act, gives California residents the right to know what personal information is collected and the purpose of its use. Data provenance logs that capture source datasets and transformations help answer what data was used to train the model. FTC guidance on AI and data advice about potential plagiarism risks. Data provenance proves that you have the rights to the data that it is trained on. New state-level requirements. AI is still an emerging technology, and let's face it, laws are slow to catch up to it. However, there's always the possibility that individual states will come up with their own laws that require data provenance. Keeping up with what is becoming the standard now will save you headaches in the future. If you are found in violation of these laws, you can be hit with a fine. But let's face it, the fine will most likely be minimal, and the CEOs might consider this, quote, cost of doing business. However, there's also a high likelihood that in addition to the fine, you'll be required to shut down your LLM and start from scratch. For me, I think that is what will have the most impact on a business. Starting over on your LLM is costly and will require time, money, and resources. And while that is happening, your production environment is down. That should get the attention of any CEO. To recap, data provenance is the chain of custody for your training material. Who owned it, when it entered the pipeline, how it was transformed, and whether anyone tampered with it. It is needed by auditors and be able to prove that you own the rights to the data. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of what data provenance is and the importance of it. If you liked this video, please consider liking this video and hitting the subscribe button. Thank you.